Hi folks, we are going to talk today about creating backgrounds for your current project that we're working on. This is something that we can do not just for this particular project, but is actually really useful for lots of different kinds of things. I personally absolutely love making backgrounds like this in Photoshop. Essentially what we're making here are little abstract paintings, kind of, that are going to sit behind whatever it is we want to put in front of them. So this is useful for lots of different things. I love this process because it's very easy. The results are very beautiful and extremely flexible. You can use this for lots of different kinds of things, lots of different kinds of effects. And I just find it really, really fun. So this is a background I created earlier. Essentially, you can ignore all these other layers over here for the moment. They come into play later. But I have essentially only 3 layers that make up this background. The first one being a picture of pavement or concrete. Really ugly, really gross looking. Not something you'd really want to look at. But something magical happens when you start combining multiple layers stacked on top of each other with some different types of colors, different kinds of patterns. Really beautiful accidents start to happen. You start to see things in a different way. And, whereas before this was literally just a picture of some concrete, now it's this beautiful sort of abstract looking image and totally original. The other thing that I really like about this is that they're totally original. They look completely different from anything that anyone has ever made. You can easily, within just a couple of minutes, make something completely unique and totally original with very little skill, to be honest. You don't really need to be able to draw to do this. You don't need to have any deep understanding of anything super fancy. It's kind of just playing around and really great things happen. So without further ado, let's get to it. I have a couple of examples. This first one I made, like I showed you, is just those 3 layers stacked together. Then I did the same thing, but also combined it with a shape layer. And that shape layer also has a layer style applied to it. So I used a star effect and put an outer glow on that layer. So you get this cool sort of cutout star effect. Here's another one, very simple, using just 3 layers, 2 textures, and a gradient. This one's a little more dark. Speaking of dark, this one's really scary. This one has a star shape in the back and then some darker layers combined together to make a sort of creepy, sort of scary kind of background. This one's a little bit more complex. This one has a number of layers combined together. Specifically, let me go back. Well, that's weird. That was a weird thing that just happened. Normal? I'm not sure what happened there. I killed something. Well, doesn't matter. So this one is a circle layer and another circle layer or a shape layer. You'll notice that they both have layer styles applied to them, just like we did on our pizza project. So this one has a shadow effect behind it, which I access just by double clicking on the layer and giving it, actually this one's an outer glow, but you get the idea, as well as a couple of textures stacked on top of each other. One of the great things about this technique is you start with something very simple and then you add to it these textures that might not seem to be really all that nice. This particular texture, for example, I don't know how well you can tell, but it's actually a photo of fiberglass insulation like you would have in your attic or inside your walls. Not something you think of as beautiful, but when you combine it with different layers, you get these really beautiful effects. A couple of other layers stacked on top, and there you have it. This one is several background layers combined with a couple of star shapes on top to create this sort of interlocking pattern of geometric shapes here. So once I turn those on, again, I think it's quite beautiful and looks a little bit too much like a Mitsubishi logo for my taste. I need to tweak it a little bit, but anyway, you get the idea. So we are going to start with, and here's another one. So we are going to start with a new document. Okay, I am specifically going to make this document 1500 by 1500 pixels. You might want to give it a name before you start, like call this new background, something like that. Click create. So this is going to give me a plain white background. I'm going to leave the background layer alone. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to really only be using one or maybe two different tools for this. The main tool I'm going to be using is this one right here. Hopefully you can see that. This is called the gradient tool. Okay, gradient tool. The shortcut for this tool is G. If you don't see it, it's possibly hiding underneath your paint bucket, but there it is. And here's what the gradient tool does. So I have a new layer, and I currently have two colors selected. I'm going to select like an orange, and I'm going to select, actually I take that back. I'm going to go with yellow, and I'm going to also pick a green. You need to make sure that you pick two colors that work well together. Otherwise, they get kind of ugly in the middle when they mix together. So what the gradient tool does, when it is set to its normal settings, this is how it will work for you. You click and drag, and wherever you release your mouse or your touchpad is where it ends. So it's going to connect those 2 points with a smoothly blended color. Okay, so this one is going horizontally. If I do it the opposite way, I can make it go vertical. You can also do it at an angle. So literally any direction you want, and it's going to blend your two colors together. Okay, so this is using the two colors that I have selected over here on my color picker. Whatever two colors you pick, those are the colors that it will use in the gradient. See here what I'm talking about is not green and red don't really blend together very nice. They kind of turn to brown in the middle, and it's not so nice. So I'm gonna stick with the green and yellow for the moment. There's a couple of options up here that you should be aware of. This is called a linear gradient, which means it makes a gradient in one direction from one color to another. I can also, however, change to different ways of working, or different ways that this gradient looks. So radial gradients, if you look at that word radial, it's similar to the word radius, or radial simply meaning something that is circular. This creates a circular pattern. So radial gradients are really great for making like sunrises, or for drawing your attention to the center of something. Whereas a linear gradient kind of like leads your eye across the picture, a radial gradient will draw your eye into the center, towards the center of that circle. Okay. Personally, my favorite gradient is the reflected gradient, which is going to create one color in the center and then fade it out in two directions, whichever direction you drag your mouse. So in addition to those, there are some other, let me just set this back to linear and just do a yellow to green like that. If I click on this little colored bar up here, it allows you to customize that gradient. In other words, like add additional colors to it if you wanted to. You could have as many colors in there as you want. If you wanted to make a gradient that had 18 colors in it, that you absolutely can do that. And there you have it. But if you click this little arrow up here, there are some other preset options. So these are gradients that are created by the Photopea people for different effects. Things like rainbows and different kinds of combinations of colors, which can be nice. One of my personal favorites, let me go back, is actually using this little guy right here. I don't know if you can see that, but this one actually has these stripes in it. And what that does is, it's technically a gradient, but what it actually is a series of lines. So if I wanted to create a pattern with a series of lines, I could set this, say, to reflected, and it's going to give me a repeating line pattern. okay? If I set it to linear, those lines are going to be wider. Let me go back. Those lines will be wider, okay? Excuse me. I'm going to make a new layer here for my linear patterns. If I set this to radial, okay, so it's that same stripy line, but in this case I set it to radial. So what this is going to do, it'll create like a target effect, a sort of series of concentric circles coming in towards the center, which is fun. Now notice I created a second layer, so now I have two layers on top of each other. Okay, this is where the fun really starts. Okay, actually I'm going to come back to that later. The fun doesn't start yet. I'm going to show you the next step. So what this I would say is missing at this point is getting some texture into it. So we're going to go back to textureking.com. We used this one previously. You can use any site that you want to find textures. You know, Google Images works for textures, but I really like textureking.com. They have a lot of really nice, detailed, and large quality textures that can work really well. So I'm just going to pick one that I think is pretty, to be honest with you. Maybe this one. Or maybe I'm going to go with this one with these. Actually, no. I'm going to go with this one. So this one has a little bit more of a linear quality inside. I'm going to go with that one. Make sure you click on it to get the full-size image before you put it into Photopea. Okay. The easiest way to get this image into Photopea is simply to click it with two fingers or right-click if you're using a mouse and choose Copy Image. Okay. Come back over here to Photopea and go Edit, Paste. Okay. The shortcut is Control-V. And there is my texture. Now, you may notice that your texture is either way too big or way too small. That is very possible. And in fact, that is to be expected. The chances are your texture is not going to be the exact perfect size. So up here at the top of my toolbar, this is my Move tool. Okay, so my Move tool moves things around, all right? But also, if I check the box at the top that says Transform Controls, the Move tool is what allows me to resize things. So I can resize this down to just the size that I want and get it positioned just where I want it. Okay? All right, so this now moves us on to the next step, which is I currently have 1, 2, 3 layers plus my background. Okay? So if I turn those back on, you'll notice that I can't see my lower layers, right? Only the top layer is visible. Because that's the way layers work. You see the one that's on top, okay? Over here, however, is the control that allows me to change that, which is the blending mode. The blending mode is right here. Currently mine is set to normal, okay? The normal blending mode means that it covers up all the lower layers. So I can't see anything on my gradient layer. So all I have is this weird texture, okay? I could move it down. So now it's under the bullseye, if you will, but it's still above the green color. Or I can put it under everything, and that's great, but now I can't see the texture at all. So this is where our blending modes come in. So this is the blending mode right here at the top. I'm going to actually put my texture on the bottom for right now. That's not necessarily the right way to do it. There's no real right way to do it. It's just kind of, you're going to play around a little bit. You're going to experiment and see what happens. So I have my color layer here on the top, okay? And the blending mode is right here, and I'm just going to experiment. I'm going to choose some different blending modes and see what happens. Hi, folks. I realized something at the end of the video I just created. I realized that my head was blocking the upper portion of our layer menu. So if I move my head out of the way so you can actually see, you'll see that this menu back here is for adjusting my blending modes. It's right here at the top of my layers, and in the video it is hidden by my head video layer. So just be aware that all those layer modes that I'm talking about are right at the top of your layers, right over here. So just make sure that you take a good look at where those, I'm sorry, the fact that you can't see that menu back there, it's back there. You'll see it on your screen. When I'm talking about it with my big head in the way, that's where it is. So when I set it to darken, it does that. It basically shows through my green and yellow color through to that underlying layer. Okay, what else have I got? Color burn, a little more bold. Linear burn, screen. Okay, so that's a lot lighter. Color dodge. Okay, so that really emphasizes those dark lines. Linear dodge, lighter color. So I do not have a particular result in mind. I'm literally just experimenting and seeing what happens. And I'm just working my way through these different modes until I find something I like. I really like that. That looks super cool. So here is my background. Here it is with that layer stacked on top. And that one I set to difference mode. Let me just see what some others look like just for fun. That is super cool. Turned completely purple, but a little dark. So I'm going to, at the moment, I'm going to go back to difference. I'm going to leave it like that. I'm into that. Now I'm going to turn back on my circles again. Okay, so now I've got 3 layers, and the bottom 2 are playing nicely together, but the top one isn't really doing anything. So I'm going to play with the blending on the top one as well. How about linear burn? Okay, so this is a sort of subtle effect. I like it. How about color dodge, linear dodge, hard light, difference. All right, now we're talking. That's kind of cool. Vivid light, no. Pin light, no. I am kind of thinking, ooh. Okay, so I'm feeling that. So there is my upper layer, okay? Now, these settings that I'm choosing are essentially random. I'm just playing around with them until I find something that I like. So when I did these other ones, I did exactly the same process. I layered on different pieces, played around with the blending modes, and changed the order around. So you may find that it looks completely different if you change the order of the layers like that. It looks completely different. What if I put the texture on the top and then change the blending of the texture? Again, completely different again. So as you see, every change you make is radically different. And you are just going to have to be the decider and decide what you think is the right look for your particular creative needs. Okay? Let me, love that. So let's say that's what I'm going to go for. I want to talk about also one more thing, which is adding shapes on top of this. Okay, so let's say I wanted to draw a shape. I used the shape tools to create like this star shape over here, and some of these other shapes I use shape tools to create those looks. So let's add a shape on top of this. How about if I so my shape tool is right over here. Okay, you're going to see it as a rectangle on your menu. It's this little guy right here, and it just says rectangle. But if you hold down your cursor, there are other tools hiding inside there. So you have an ellipse, which is really a fancy way of saying an oval or a circle. So that is for making ovals. If you hold the shift key while you do it, it will make perfect circles. Okay, so like so. There are also what are called parametric shapes. What the heck is a parametric shape? Photopea calls parametric shapes kind of like custom shapes. Up here at the top, it allows you to pick polygon, star, arrow, or spiral. Polygons are just shapes with a certain number of sides. So I can specify the number of sides up here. Let's say I wanted to make a 8-sided object. Like an octagon, like a stop sign. There it is. Okay. I also have some options here regarding the shape of the corners. So if I change that corner radius, I can get more rounded shapes, like so. Okay. Other options, I have stars. Okay, so this is an 8-pointed star. All right. Excuse me. I can set the number of sides that my star has right here. If I want to make a 15-pointed star, you absolutely can do so. In fact, you can go up to 30. So there's my 30-pointed star. You can also control the size, what is called the inner radius, which really essentially controls how long the arms are on your star shape. So a bigger inner radius kind of like pushes the center of the star out. If I make this inner radius really small, like let's say 10, it'll give me a shape with a very small central area. I'm kind of into that right there. Actually, I'm gonna go with this as my my shape that I'm gonna use. So there you have it. So now I have this shape living on top of my background form, and I think that looks pretty cool. If I were to say put this under one of the other layers, I could radically change the way that it looks by changing that stacking. So don't be afraid to play, don't be afraid to experiment, and just see what happens. I think that looks super cool. That'd be a pretty good start for a background. But really important is that you play. If you notice, I made about 7 or 8 different versions. I like to make one every day just for fun. Why not? They don't take long, and they're really easy to make, and they're fun. So if I like what I've done, I'm going to save it. So I just go to File and click Save as PSD. Okay. Once I save it, it's going to download that file. Okay, and then I can keep messing with it. If I decide that I want to go back and make additional changes, I can make changes and just save them as I go. So if I make changes and decide that I want to try something new, make some changes, see what happens, save it again. Make as many as you want. The goal is to make one really good one, but I wouldn't just make one and say, I hope that's good enough. I'd make several of them and then pick your best one. And that's it. Have fun. That's all I got.